perceive the effectiveness of capital punishment. Okay. The following are our key terms to define and isolate what we wondered about. Internalize, when something becomes deeply ingrained and people take it for granted to be true. Dominant values, the abstract ideals set in place by people in power. Society, a group of relatively self-sufficient people living within a geographic boundary, in this case, their state line, who pass culture down from one generation to another. Legality, whether or not there is a law restricting a certain act. Capital punishment, punishing someone by death. Effectiveness, the degree to which capital punishment successfully deters people from committing crimes. State of origin, the state that a person would identify as having had the most formative influence on his or her values. Our theory was that people tend to internalize the dominant values in their society, and since the legality of capital punishment differs from state to state, an individual's perceived effectiveness of capital punishment is dependent on whether or not it is legal within their state of origin.
Sure.
Our independent variable was state of origin, which we'll measure by asking our participants what state they're from. Our dependent variable was the perceived effectiveness of the death penalty, which we'll measure by asking our participants the question, how strongly do you agree with how strongly do you agree with I'll say statement, okay. Our dependent variable was the perceived effectiveness of the death penalty, which we'll measure by asking the question, how strongly do you agree with the statement that the death penalty is effective in its purpose of deterring murder? We measured internalization by asking, on a scale of 1 to 10, how strongly do you agree with the following statement, that the death penalty is effective in its purpose of deterring murder? We measured dominant values by whether or not capital punishment is legal in each participant's state of origin. We measured a person's society by asking them what state they're from. And we measured the legality of capital punishment in each state by researching it online. We hypothesized that people who are from a state where capital punishment is legal are more likely to perceive capital punishment as effective, and people who are from a state where capital punishment is not legal are more likely to perceive capital punishment as not effective. In this case, effectiveness means a rating of higher than 5 on a scale of 1 to 10. The participants in our survey were 63% male and 37% female. The ages range from 18 to 22, with 10% being 18, 20% being 19, 27% being 20, 27% being 21, and 17% being 22. They were 70% white, 13% black, 3% Asian, 3% Pakistani, 7% white/Hispanic, and 3% Hispanic. They were 50% Protestant Christian, 3% Greek Orthodox, 20% Catholic, 10% Jewish, 7% agnostic, 3% Muslim, and 7% atheist. We had at least one participant from 23 different states.
How strongly do you agree that the death penalty is an effective way of deterring from murder? So, like 1, you don't agree at all, or 10 being you agree it does deter from murder?
I would say 7.
Do you find the death penalty morally or ethically just?
I do not.
Please evaluate this statement on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 being you don't agree, 10 being you agree. The death penalty is an effective way of deterring potential criminals from committing the act of murder.
So what I mean, I do disagree.
1 being you don't disagree, 10 being you agree completely.
Oh, probably.
Are you morally or ethically against the death penalty or for it? Or do you see it as morally or ethically just?
I do if it's kind of a clear-cut case. If there's any doubt, I think the death penalty is wrong and it should be a life sentence instead.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how strongly do you agree with the following statement? With 1 being you don't agree, 10 being you agree entirely, and 5 being neutral. The death penalty is effective in its purpose of deterring murder, so it prevents people from committing murder.
I'd say maybe a 6.
Great, thank you.
Do you see the death penalty as morally or ethically just?
I don't see it as ethically just.
And do you see there's alternative ways of deterring from murder other than the death penalty? So other ways from preventing criminals from committing murder?
From preventing them,
Yeah.
psychological help, confinement.
And on the scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being you don't agree at all, and 10 being you agree completely, evaluate this following statement. The death penalty is effective in its purpose of deterring murder, so therefore it's effective in preventing possible criminals from committing the act of murder. So 1 being you don't agree at all with that statement, 10 being you completely agree with that statement, 5 being neutral. What would you give on a scale?
2.
2? Do you see the death penalty as morally or ethically just?
If it's for murdering someone else, then yeah.
And do you see other alternative ways of deterring potential criminals from murder other than having the death penalty as an impossible punishment?
Maybe like life sentence in jail, but I mean life is kind of.
And the last question is, the death penalty is effective in its purpose of deterring murder. With that statement, do you agree, disagree, or on a scale of 1 to 10? So 1 being you don't agree with that statement, and 10 being you agree entirely with that statement. So it is effective in preventing criminals from murder. What do you say? On a scale of 1 to 10.
5.
5. You think the death penalty is morally or ethically just?
Yes.
And do you see other ways of deterring potential criminals from murder other than having the death penalty as a possible form of punishment?
Deterrence? Not. I really just feel like punishment's the best deterrent, so I mean they already get life sentences.
Okay. So like a life sentence would be a
Yeah.
possible way? Okay.
Yeah.
Alright. And last question, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being you don't agree at all, 10 being you agree completely, please evaluate this following statement. The death penalty is effective in its purpose of deterring murder, so it is effective in preventing potential criminals from murdering.
5. I don't really think people are thinking of that before they kill someone.
Okay.
Before our analysis, I would like to remind you of our 2 hypotheses. People who are from a state of origin where the capital punishment is legal are more likely to receive capital punishment as effective. And people who are from a state of origin where capital punishment is not legal are more likely to perceive capital punishment as not effective. There was a noticeable difference between perceived effectiveness between different races, with African Americans having noticeably lower perceived effectiveness than whites and other minorities. On average, people who thought that the death penalty was morally just also had a higher perceived effectiveness of the death penalty. To remind you, our theory was that people tend to internalize the dominant values in their society, and since the legality of capital punishment differs from state to state, an individual's perceived effectiveness of capital punishment is dependent on whether or not it is legal within their state of origin. Through our data, we found a positive correlation between the legality of capital punishment and people's state of origin and their beliefs about its effectiveness. People from these states with legal capital punishment were more likely to rate its effectiveness above a 5 on a scale of 1 to 10. However, there were other demographic factors such as race and religion that also had correlations with beliefs about effectiveness of capital punishment. The data supported our hypotheses, but overall, it's impossible to determine whether the state of origin is a cause of beliefs about effectiveness of capital punishment. Though there is a correlation between the two, time order was violated. That is, effect happened in the absence of the cause. There were people from states without legal capital punishment that still rated it to be effective, which means above a 5 on a scale of 1 to 10. Ultimately, our survey was not adequate to determine whether the legality of the death penalty in a person's state of origin is the only cause of their beliefs about capital punishment's effectiveness, so more research is needed.